mother baboon clutches her infant against her chest, her eyes locked on the shadow cutting through the morning sky. Above her, talons spread wide, an eagle descends with the precision of a guided missile, its piercing shriek shattering the relative peace of dawn. In that single heartbeat between safety and catastrophe, between life and death, the entire African savannah holds its breath. This isn't a scene from some distant, abstract wilderness. This is survival in its purest, most unforgiving form, playing out beneath the same sun that rises over all of us, reminding us that nature doesn't negotiate, doesn't compromise, and certainly doesn't forgive. The African plain awakens not with the gentle stirring of a peaceful morning, but with the urgent, primal understanding that every new day is a gamble with mortality itself. As the first golden rays of sunlight pierce the horizon, painting the grasslands in amber and gold, a baboon troop emerges from their sleeping refuge in the acacia trees. There's no snooze button in the wild, no leisurely breakfast in bed, just the immediate, pressing need to move, to feed, to survive another rotation of the earth. The alpha male, his scarred face a testament to countless battles won and barely survived, surveys his domain with eyes that miss nothing. His muzzle bears the marks of previous encounters with predators and rivals alike, each scar a chapter in an unwritten autobiography of violence and endurance. Behind him, mothers gather their young with an urgency that needs no explanation, their movements efficient and purposeful. These aren't casual family outings. These are calculated migrations where a single moment of inattention can mean the difference between seeing another sunset and becoming part of the food chain. The infants cling to their mother's fur with tiny fists, their wide eyes already learning the first and most important lesson of their existence. Trust no one and nothing beyond the protective circle of the troop. As they descend from their arboreal fortress and begin their march toward distant water sources, every rustle of grass, every shift in the wind carries potential threat. This is existence stripped down to its most fundamental equation: move, eat, reproduce, protect, survive. There's a brutal beauty in this simplicity, a clarity of purpose that our complex human lives often obscure but never truly escape. The morning's fragile tranquility shatters like dropped glass when the first eagle makes its appearance. These aren't the majestic, soaring symbols of freedom we romanticize in our documentaries and national emblems. These are calculated killers, aerial assassins weighing 8 to 12 pounds of pure predatory efficiency. The lead eagle circles with the patience of a chess master, reading the troop's formation, identifying weakness, vulnerability, opportunity. Its partner joins the reconnaissance, and suddenly the baboons aren't just foraging. They're combatants in a three-dimensional battlefield where the enemy controls the high ground. The alpha male's warning bark cuts through the air like a gunshot, and instantly the troop's formation shifts from casual migration to defensive positions. Mothers pull their infants close. Dominant males position themselves at the perimeter, and every member of the troop becomes simultaneously predator and prey, aggressor and defender. When the first eagle commits to its dive, the transformation is instantaneous. A leisurely glide becomes a controlled fall, wings tucked, talons extended forward like the landing gear of a fighter jet. The target is a juvenile baboon, perhaps 2 years old, who had wandered just slightly beyond the protective umbrella of the group. What follows is chaos orchestrated by millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Baboons surge upward, scrambling into the lower branches of nearby trees, turning the eagle's advantage of open sky into a confined arena where primate agility can counter avian speed. Males bark and lunge, creating a wall of teeth and aggression between the attackers and the vulnerable young. Females position themselves as living shields, their bodies literally interposed between death and their offspring. The eagles adjust, adapt, coordinate their attacks with the precision of a military operation. One feints left while the other sweeps right, probing for openings, testing resolve, waiting for the inevitable mistake that exhaustion or panic will produce. And then it happens. A subadult male, emboldened by youth and inexperience, lunges too far from cover in an aggressive display meant to drive the eagles away. The miscalculation is instant and catastrophic. Eagle talons, capable of exerting over 400 pounds of pressure per square inch, sink into flesh and fur. The baboon's scream is primal, a sound that transcends species and speaks to the universal language of agony. The eagle launches skyward with its prize, but the baboon's size and desperate resistance create a mid-air struggle that ends with both combatants crashing back into the tree branches. The second eagle joins the assault, and what follows is too brutal, too visceral for nature documentaries that prefer sanitized narratives of the circle of life. By the time the eagles depart, one baboon lies motionless on the ground below, the cost of survival paid in blood and trauma. The troop retreats, not in defeat, but in the pragmatic acknowledgement that they've lost this particular engagement. Above them, the eagles circle in lazy victory spirals, their breakfast secured, indifferent to the grief and rage they've left behind. But nature, in its infinite capacity for compound misery, isn't finished with the troop. The sky that had been their enemy now becomes their next challenge as dark clouds boil up from the horizon with ominous speed. In Africa, when the rains come, they don't arrive. They assault, they invade, they transform the landscape with biblical intensity. The first drops are deceptive, fat and warm, almost welcome after the morning's violence. Then the deluge begins in earnest, and the savannah becomes something else entirely. A churning, dangerous seascape where familiar landmarks disappear beneath rising water and every depression becomes a potential death trap. The baboons, already exhausted from their encounter with the eagles, now face an enemy that can't be fought, can't be reasoned with, can't be escaped through speed or strategy. Water rises around the base of trees that had been their salvation minutes before, transforming refuges into potential prisons. The current strengthens, pulling at their perches, threatening to dislodge them and sweep them into a maelstrom where even the strongest swimmer becomes just another piece of debris. The alpha male makes a decision that would seem insane in any other context. He abandons the relative safety of the trees and plunges into the flood. It's a calculated gamble born of desperate necessity. Stay and potentially drown trapped in the trees, or swim and possibly reach higher ground before exhaustion or the current claims them. One by one, the troop follows, mothers with infants clinging to their backs, juveniles dog-paddling with all their strength, dominant males positioned to intercept any member swept away by the current. What follows is a display of collective survival instinct that belies the brutal hierarchies and constant competition that define baboon society. In this moment, they are unified by shared desperation, each member's survival dependent on the group maintaining cohesion through the chaos. They swim not as individuals, but as a living organism, adjusting course collectively, redistributing effort, ensuring that the weakest members don't fall behind and disappear into the brown, roiling water. Minutes stretch into eternities, exhaustion sets in, but the opposite bank gradually, impossibly, draws nearer. When they finally drag themselves onto solid ground, they collapse not in triumph, but in the simple, overwhelming relief of continued existence. The rain continues its assault, but they've survived, diminished and traumatized, but alive. The aftermath of the storm brings temporary respite, and with it, the resumption of the troops' never-ending quest for sustenance. The young baboons, resilient with the remarkable recuperative powers of youth, begin to play again, their games teaching combat skills they'll need to survive into adulthood. They wrestle and chase, mimicking the violence they've witnessed, preparing for the violence they'll inevitably participate in. The adults feed with renewed urgency, replenishing calories burned in the morning's multiple catastrophes. For a brief window, peace seems possible. But baboon society is built on hierarchies maintained through constant assertion and challenge. And beneath the surface calm, tensions simmer. A subordinate male, emboldened by the chaos of the day or simply sensing opportunity, makes his move against one of the dominant males. What begins as postural displays and aggressive vocalizations escalates with terrifying speed into physical combat. These aren't the stylized, mostly harmless dominance displays of some species. Baboon males possess canine teeth longer than those of leopards, capable of inflicting horrific damage. The fight is savage and brief, a whirlwind of fur and fangs that ends with the challenger bloodied and fleeing, exiled from the troop by his failed ambition. The victor reasserts his position through displays of aggression that reinforce the social order. And just like that, the hierarchy is restored. It's brutal, it's violent, but it's also efficient. Order maintained through force, because in the wild, there's no alternative mechanism for dispute resolution. The exiled male disappears into the grasslands alone, his survival chances dramatically reduced, another casualty of the unforgiving mathematics of natural selection. The troop moves on, because in the wild, there's no time for extended grief or contemplation. There's only the next meal, the next threat, the next challenge to survival. The young, still learning the rules of this savage game, explore their environment with the dangerous curiosity that characterizes all juvenile animals. One young baboon, perhaps emboldened by surviving the morning's trials, perhaps simply unlucky, wanders slightly beyond the group's protective perimeter. In the dappled shadows beneath a fallen log, something ancient and patient has been waiting. The python, a master of ambush predation, has remained motionless for hours, its cold-blooded metabolism allowing patience that warm-blooded creatures can't match. When the young baboon passes within striking range, the snake's attack is explosive and final. Coils like living cable wrap around the small primate before it can even scream a warning, constricting with hydraulic force that stops breath, stops heartbeat, stops everything. The troop responds instantly, adults rushing to the aid of the captured juvenile, but pythons don't release prey once secured. Male baboons bite and tear at the snake, inflicting damage, but the python's armor-like scales and enormous muscular strength make it nearly impervious to their assault. The mathematics of the situation are coldly simple. The snake has secured its meal, and the troop lacks the physical tools to force a reversal. After minutes of futile struggle, the baboons retreat, their collective helplessness in the face of this particular predator, a harsh reminder that strength and numbers don't guarantee victory against all threats. The python begins the slow process of consuming its prey, disappearing into the undergrowth with its prize, and the troop moves on because lingering near death serves no purpose. Another member lost, another lesson learned by those who survive. Meanwhile, across the same unforgiving savannah, a different drama unfolds within a lion pride. Proof that the laws governing survival spare no one, regardless of size or position in the food chain. The pride's dominant male, his mane full and dark, faces a challenge from a younger coalition of males who've been circling for weeks, waiting for opportunity. When the confrontation finally erupts, it's catastrophic. Over 500 pounds of muscle and fang colliding with the singular purpose of establishing dominance through overwhelming violence. Lions don't fight to wound or discourage. They fight to kill or drive away because the stakes are absolute. The victor gains breeding rights, territory, and resources. The defeated gains exile, injury, and potentially death. The older male fights with the desperation of someone with everything to lose, but youth and numbers eventually overwhelm experience and rage. When the dust settles, the former king limps away from his pride, bloodied and dethroned. His reign ended not by time or sickness, but by younger, stronger challengers who have followed the same brutal path he once walked to power. He retreats to the margins of the territory he once controlled, wounded, alone, facing the same mathematics of survival that govern every creature here. That night, lying in the darkness with wounds throbbing, he confronts a choice: surrender to injury and starvation, or find the will to continue. When dawn breaks, hunger provides the answer. A herd of buffalo grazes in the distance, their massive forms seeming impossible prey for a single, injured predator. But desperation is its own form of strength, and sometimes the impossible becomes merely improbable when survival demands it. The lion stalks with the accumulated skill of years, reading the herd's movement, identifying the vulnerable, an older female whose movements suggest injury or illness. The final charge is a masterwork of timing and power. 400 pounds of predator launching with the precise moment when the buffalo's attention wavers. The kill isn't clean or quick. Buffalo don't die easily. But eventually, exhausted and bloodied, the lion stands over his prey, strength returning with each mouthful of meat, purpose renewed through successful violence. As evening descends across the African plain, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson, two different species in two different locations settle into their respective forms of temporary safety. The baboon troop reconvenes in the acacia trees, their numbers diminished, their bodies marked by the day's accumulation of small and large traumas. The lion rests beside the carcass of the buffalo, alone but alive, wounded but surviving. They share nothing obvious: different diets, different social structures, different evolutionary paths. Yet they're bound by the same unbreakable code that governs all life here. Survive this day so you can face the challenges of the next. There's no moral dimension to their struggles, no justice or injustice, no fairness or unfairness. There's only continuation or cessation, survival or death. Here's what strikes me about these parallel narratives, and here's where we need to talk about what they mean for us, sitting comfortably far removed from such immediate existential threats. These animals don't waste energy on self-pity, on questioning the fairness of their circumstances, on wishing the world were different than it is. They accept reality with a clarity we often lack, and they respond to challenges with immediate, focused action rather than paralysis or complaint. The baboon troop didn't spend the afternoon debating whether the eagles should have attacked or processing their feelings about the storm. They addressed threats as they emerged and kept moving forward. The exiled lion didn't surrender to his circumstances or waste energy on resentment. He identified what he needed to survive and pursued it with single-minded determination. There's profound wisdom in this approach, wisdom we've traded for comfort and complexity, but haven't truly transcended. If this story made you think, made you question, made you see your own struggles through a different lens, subscribe to this channel, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment telling me about a time you pushed through when everything seemed impossible. Let's build a community that understands that survival, real, meaningful survival, isn't about avoiding challenges, but about facing them with courage and determination.